Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm watching the second Punic War by OverSimplified. I've watched the first Punic War a while ago, and I think it's time I finally watched the second one. So, time to watch it. Link to the original videos will be down in the description below. 241 BC. So it's immediately after the first Punic War.
Our beloved mercenaries. Let's hear it.
They're all just beat up.
Thank you one and all for your hard work fighting in the first Punic War. Would have been nice if you'd won. Maybe tried a little harder. But this isn't the finger-pointing convention. I know you all have one thing on your minds. Hey, when are we all getting paid?
They're not gonna get paid. I mean, they lost.
Remember you lost your... Okay. Jim, why don't you tell them? I'm not telling them, you tell them. Ugh.
Whoever tells them is gonna get murdered.
Paid. We lost the first Punic War and owe the Romans a ton of reparations. Of course we can't pay you in full.
In full? So you're paying them? Just not in full?
Don't burn this place to the ground. Come on, fellas. Will killing us really make you feel better about your money? Yes. Yes, it will.
So they just started rebelling?
Shut up, Jim. You're fired. I guess that makes two of us. Huh? In the aftermath of the First Punic War, Carthage's disgruntled mercenaries, left unpaid for all their hard work, revolted, and Carthage found itself caught up in an extremely destructive mercenary war. The panicked Carthaginians hired more mercenaries to fight the mercenaries they couldn't afford to pay, and Carthage came dangerously close to collapse. All the while, across the water, there was Rome.
Didn't Rome take Sicilian? I mean,
Corsica? Just kicked their ass in the first Punic War, and now their own mercenaries are revolting. Haha. Yeah. Wait.
Unless they take Corsica during this chaos.
Well, we're definitely taking advantage of this situation. So almost certainly, yes. The Romans did, in fact, take advantage of the situation. Amongst the chaos, rebels on the Carthaginian island of Sardinia sent out a cry for help to Rome. Hot diggity dog, said the Romans. That's free real estate. And so in they went. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's our island. Get the hell off.
Only Sardinia?
Hey, they requested our help. We're simply...
What about Corsica?
Oh, no, you don't. Look, we're sending our own army to deal with the rebels, okay? But just to be clear, we're not trying to start a fight with you, so, you know, don't declare war on us or anything. War! We surrender! Great.
You just fucking ended the last one. Oh, so they did take both Corsica and Sardinia.
The Carthaginians were hopping mad, as if their humiliating loss in the first
hit them while they're weak.
Bad enough. The Romans now took advantage of their mercenary problem and stole their islands. This shocking land grab was pretty hard to justify, even by Roman standards. Additionally, the Romans now demanded Carthage pay them even more money on top of what was already owed. If Rome was trying to make Carthage as mad as possible, they were doing
yeah, that's definitely not good. That money is never getting paid.
Were being sown, and they were being watered with Carthage.
Honestly, after the Romans took those islands, there is no reason for Carthage to pay that money, because a second war is guaranteed at this point. So why even pay the reparations for the first one? Try and win the second one. Focus on that instead. Save that money to rebuild your army.
In tears. Resentment in Carthage only continued to grow. Eventually, Carthage solved their mercenary problem thanks to Carthaginian military genius and hero of the First Punic War, Hamilcar Barca. He sorted those naughty mercenaries out with some good old-fashioned
and he punished them severely.
And the destructive mercenary war was over. Still, all was not well in Carthage. Mere decades ago, they were the top dogs in the Western Mediterranean. Now,
not anymore.
After the crushing defeat in the First Punic War and a huge bill to pay the Romans, Carthage was well and truly under Rome's thumb. What on earth were they supposed to do? If they wanted any chance at regaining their former strength, there was one thing they needed now, more than anything: money. But as long as they owed Rome $1 bazillion, there was nothing they could do.
Just don't pay it.
For them, amongst their ranks, there was one big hunk of a man with one big clump of a brain. Me! Hamilcar Barca! Yes! Wait, Why do you all have the exact same voice? Ah, I have it too. That's right. Hero of the First Punic War.
Is this where he goes to
Greatest
Spain?
general alive. And the poster above my bed. Hamilcar Barca had an idea. All right, we need money? Well, I've got one word for you. Spain. An area filled with lucrative silver mines, from which the silver would flow like a river. And our pockets would be stuffed, like Tony's mother at a buffet. Hey, so here's my proposal. You send me with an army to Spain. I'll expand our territory, get those silver mines up and running, and we'll be able to pay the Romans back in no time. Okay, but just to check, you're not secretly raising the money to go on a bloodthirsty revenge spree against Rome, are you? Because we can't afford that.
He is.
Hanno, my dear, I'm simply going to pay them back. Well, that wasn't reassuring. Few in Carthage were as bitter about their loss in the First Punic War as Hamilcar Barca. 98% of his brain matter had been reallocated to thoughts of revenge. He was also fed up with the Carthaginian politicians. For
he pushed those beliefs onto his son as well, because I'm pretty sure Hamilton hated Hamilton. I keep calling him Hamilton. It's Hannibal. I keep mixing him up with Hamilton from Formula 1. Hannibal, I'm pretty sure, hated the Romans as well. So I'm guessing that his father was the source of that hatred.
Going to Spain meant being able to act independently from
if I accidentally call Hannibal Hamilton, just ignore that, please.
Perhaps somewhere down the line,
I can't help it.
Revenge. However, he wasn't going to Spain by himself. Hannibal? Yes, father? Would you like to come with me to build an empire in Spain? Oh boy, would I! Barbara, mind if I take our 9-year-old son with me? I want to implant an intention to
He's 9?
Prepare him for a glorious campaign of vengeance. Just try not to traumatize him, dear. No promises. The young boy Hannibal would accompany his father. Watching, learning. Boy, you accompany his father. Watching.
The way he smells of Roman blood. Damn it, was the 4th one? It passes by too quick, I can't read it. His 1,000-yard stare.
Boy, you see that city over there? Yes, father?
They're the ones who defeated us.
Do you know what we do to Romans? No, father. We hate them, Hannibal. We hate them.
So he did instill those beliefs in his son.
Being. But why, father? Can't I just play with my Digimon?
This is the oversimplified version
they took
of events.
From us. Our land, our wealth, our pride. Those animals. I'll tear them limb from limb. I'll burn their pathetic city to the ground. Dad? I'm sorry, son. I've just never been so proud. Keep going. I'll slaughter their people.
I don't think Hannibal ever actually burned down Rome.
Hannibal to the Temple of
I don't think he made it that far.
Swear an oath never to be a friend of Rome. Off Dad and son went for their lovely beach holiday in Spain. But Spain was already inhabited by many tribespeople, and when Hamilcar
you conquer them.
Their territory, they were like, "Hey, who the hell are you? What are you doing here? I'm teaching my son how to become a warrior like me." Aw, well that's sweet. Well then,
and he's gonna do it by killing you.
See what you got.
Impressive.
As Hamilcar got to work fighting the tribes of Iberia and expanding Carthaginian influence, Hannibal became a child of war, even earning battle scars from a young age. And he grew to become a great military leader himself, making his father very proud. I love you so much, son. Dad, not in front of the enemy. You killed that guy so well, son. The Barcas successfully consolidated Carthaginian power, got those silver mines up and running, and were sending buckets of cash back to a money-starved Carthage. And symbolizing Carthage's regrowing strength, a beautiful new city would eventually be founded in Spain. New Carthage, with a magnificent palace at its center. Carthage is back, baby! What in the name of Apollo is going on here? Ah, Romans! Flowing silver mines? Dancing elephants? What are you up to, Hamilcar? I'm simply gathering
It's pretty obvious what he's up to.
Oh, okay then. Or are you rebuilding strength to go on a bloodthirsty revenge spree? Like I said, Claudius, I'm simply trying to pay you back. Aw, you guys are hugging. No, we're not.
No, they're not.
I was. I was hugging. Hamilcar had practically carved out a kingdom for himself in Spain, free from the meddling Carthaginian politicians. His power
Didn't the Romans
was
try to
becoming
intervene
immense.
in
But
their
Dad,
conquest of
yes, my
Spain?
son? I'm confused. Are we
Or maybe
really
I'm
simply
remembering
paying the
that
Romans
incorrectly.
back? We're not going to go on a bloodthirsty revenge spree? Of course we are. I'm just saying that to get the Romans off our backs. Listen, here's the most important life lesson I have for you. Vengeance is everything. An all-encompassing thirst for vengeance is great for your mental health. Are you still confused? No, I get it now. But what if the Romans
that
find
type
out
of
what
stuff
we're
will
up to?
destroy you
They
from the
won't find
inside.
out. Why? Well, Hannibal, because I use NordVPN.
Oh my god.
Carthaginian tears, a child of war, and the Carthaginian conquest of Spain. The Carthaginian recovery had been staggeringly quick, and Rome was seriously alarmed. But they were also preoccupied with ongoing wars elsewhere, including an expansionist war to the north, where they were enslaving thousands of northern Celts. So for now, to keep Carthage in check, the Romans insisted on a new treaty. See this river? The two sides agreed.
Yeah, they
that
did try
everything
to stop
above
that
it
conquest.
was in Rome's sphere of influence, while beneath it was Carthage. Under no circumstances were the Carthaginians to expand north of that river. But for now, Hamilcar and son were living it up. Well, son, here's to many more years of successful campaigning in Spain. Now, if you'll excuse
I think
me,
this is where he
I
dies.
just have to go fight those guys. See you later, son. I love you.
And there he goes.
What the? Oh, crap. I drowned? Oh, well. Always remember, son.
Hate the Romans.
Are vengeance.
Close enough.
Also, delete my browsing history. Hamilcar Barca was tragically ambushed at a river and drowned.
He was ambushed,
His son-in-law,
okay.
and possibly also his lover, no further questions, took charge for a while.
Excuse
but
me?
he too was later assassinated, leaving finally a 26-year-old Hannibal in charge of the Carthaginian
26?
armies in Spain.
So
Sources say the
they've
man
spent
readily accepted
17
him as
years
their
in
leader.
Spain at
He
this
chose
point.
to suffer the same hardships as his men. He lived in the same conditions, was often the first into battle and the last one out. And it also helped that he looked a lot like his dad. He had the total respect of
Wow.
his men. If he said jump, they said how high. If he said tuck me in, they said how tight. If he said talk to a girl without peeing your pants, they said that's impossible. Nobody can do that. An army that would follow him anywhere would be crucial
So-
for exacting his vengeance against Rome.
Unconditional loyalty.
Hannibal's army had become a strong and loyal fighting force, and that was making
That's good for him.
mission very uncomfortable. Seeing Carthage re-strengthen so quickly was not something Rome had expected, yet here they were, paying off their debts and expanding their territory. It didn't
Time to
feel
expand
very much
east.
like Carthage was under Rome's thumb
Close
at
to
all,
Spain.
and Rome wanted to put an end to it. Tensions were strung tighter than your liar's G-string, and all it would take was one incident to trigger all-out war. And in 219 BC, a city in Spain would find itself at the very center of that fateful incident, Saguntum. Remember that treaty declaring everything south of this river to be Carthage's sphere of
Saguntum
influence?
is part of
Well,
the
Saguntum should
Carthaginian
therefore
sphere of
obviously be
influence.
Carthaginian, right? Wrong! Saguntum had actually scored itself an informal alliance with Rome, after Rome had helped it with an internal dispute. With Carthaginian encroachment, Saguntum began to fear for its independence, and Rome declared itself Saguntum's protector. But this clearly went against the Ebro River Treaty. So what on earth
Yeah.
was Rome doing? Were the Saguntines and the Romans truly just BFFs? It's possible. Or was Rome deliberately
It's kind of a weird situation because on one hand they are technically in the Carthaginian sphere of influence, but at the same time they are still an independent nation, so them allying themselves with the Romans is technically not against the treaty. It's a weird situation.
trying to interfere with Hannibal's Spanish expansion and maintain
they
a staging
definitely are.
post for a future war with Carthage?
It could be
More
used as that.
likely. And Hannibal certainly viewed this Rome-Saguntum alliance as an outrage. Yet another example of Roman arrogance. At first, he left Saguntum alone, But having learnt from his father to hate all things Roman, and having inherited his father's dream of bringing Rome to its knees more and more, Hannibal may have begun to see Saguntum as an opportunity. Could this controversial alliance be just what devilish little Hannibal needed to kickstart a second war with Rome
The
and
Grinch face.
restore Carthaginian dominance? It's even possible that Rome were also using Saguntum to goad Hannibal into a fight so they could go and kick him out of Spain. And as the two giants began gearing up for round two,
Is Rome ready
the poor people
to
of Saguntum
go on a
had
conquest
no
at this
idea
time?
that they were about to be crushed in the collision. Hey, your alliance with Saguntum is an insult, and we won't stand for it. They're our friends, Hannibal, and if you lay a finger on them, it'll be an act of war. Yeah, Hannibal, back the hell off. War, eh? I was
Wow.
thinking I might just besiege their city and massacre their people. I hope you do, Hannibal. Find out what happens. Yeah, we hope you do, Hannibal. Wait, what?
Do you?
I will. Go ahead, kill them all. Okay then. Fine, fine.
Not so
Okay,
sure about this
guess
alliance
I'll do
anymore, are
just
you?
That. Consul? We look forward to it. Consul? You're gonna protect us though, right, Consul?
Nope.
Consul! Oh no! To top it all off, when the Saguntine people made the genius decision of raiding into Carthaginian territory,
Oh
enough
my
was
god.
enough. In an action that was guaranteed to provoke the Romans into war, Hannibal besieged the city. The siege of Saguntum lasted 8 cruel months before Hannibal broke through
8
the city
months?
defenses and turned Saguntum into a killing field. It was a massacre. What the hell? Tell me I didn't just catch you massacring our friends, the Sugantes. Well, Consul, if you like the Sugantes so much, perhaps you should sug on these nuts. Hearing word of the attack on Saguntum, Rome was understandably in an uproar, and all eyes were now fixated on what would happen next, as Rome sent a delegation to Carthage, led by one of the most highly esteemed Roman senators, Fabius Maximus. He demanded an answer for Hannibal's sins. All right, listen up, scum. You've got a rogue general in Spain attacking a Roman ally. What are we supposed to do about it? Well, there shouldn't have even been a Roman ally in Spain. You're the aggressor here. Hand Hannibal over to us as a criminal so we can punish him severely. No, yes, no.
Punish him severely.
No. Look, I hold in the folds of my toga both peace and war. Which one should I let drop? Whichever one you want. Then I choose The Second Punic War had begun.
I know this is kind of off topic, but I really want OverSimplified to cover Rome's earlier wars, like the Samnite Wars, where Rome was really just starting out from the very beginning. I want to see that stuff covered. Honestly, the amount of stuff that OverSimplified could do with just Rome itself could make him content for at least 10 years probably. And I would watch every single one of them. But back to the Second Punic War.
Pack it up, boys. We've got them. We already destroyed these clowns once, and we were the underdogs. Now, we're the overdogs? Hot dogs. Exactly. This is gonna be easy. Here's the plan. Consul Longus, you take your army and sail straight for Carthage. Burn that city to the ground. And Consul Scipio, you just head on over to Iberia and make sure this Hannibal guy doesn't do anything crazy. I mean, what's he gonna do? Cross the Alps? We're going
he
to
did.
What? Cross the Alps. We're going to...
I think he lost most of his men when he did
Told
that.
you, Hannibal will freeze
So
to
it was
death.
still a pretty
Trust
stupid
me,
plan.
Jerome. The Romans are expecting us to fight the same way we did last time, passively, taking no initiative. They think it's gonna be easy. So this time, we have to be aggressive. We have to go on the attack. It sickens me to say this, but this time, we have to be a little more Roman. You mean
Oh.
we're gonna take poops and
How could
baths
you?
together? But I'm insecure about my hairy legs. No, I'm saying this time, we're gonna take the fight to them. Think about it. Rome thinks they're simply going to invade us and win the war. So when they suddenly find themselves being invaded from the north, they'll freak out. Like Tony's mother. when the buffet runs out of shrimp. Hey! I got to admit, it's actually kind of genius. And my hairy legs will insulate me from the cold. That's the spirit. Hannibal, you have my sword, and my spear, and my legs. Ugh.
Ew.
Hannibal's plan, a daring alpine trek to surprise the Romans, was a bold but risky strategy. If it
He's also
paid
going
off,
to have to go
he
through
could
all
catch
the
Romans with their pants
tribes
down,
on the
but he could
way.
also
They're
end up
definitely not
losing
going
a
to
ton
be
of
chill
main
with him
supplies
just
in the
marching his
hostile
army
mountain
through.
Conditions. Nevertheless, in 218 BC, with
And
a
how is he
in
gonna
his
get the
eyes
elephants
and
through
some
there?
vengeance in his belly, Hannibal brought his force of almost 100,000 men across the Ebro River. They spent
He's gonna
months
lose at
on
least
the
half
road,
of them.
trekking through the cold, hostile mountain conditions. And when they finally reached the other side, they said, "Hooray! We did it! We crossed the Alps."
There's
No,
still more
those are the
mountains before the
Pyrenees.
Alps. Yeah.
Those are the Alps.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
After crossing the Pyrenees, the army then had to pass through southern Gaul, a vast territory filled with tribespeople, many of whom were
Yup.
hostile to Hannibal's presence. His journey to the Alps was an ordeal in itself, as he was forced to fight his way through and incurred pretty hefty losses before even reaching the mountains. His plan was
How
almost
many?
stopped in its tracks entirely, as the Roman consul Scipio, on his way to Iberia, discovered Hannibal was right on his doorstep. Suddenly, Hannibal's journey became a race, as he rushed to get his massive army across the vast Rhone River before the Romans could intercept him. The crossing was chaotic, with the panicking elephants causing several men to drown. And the first combat of the war occurred when small scouting parties from each side encountered one another. When Scipio finally caught up to Hannibal's position, what he found was an empty Carthaginian camp. Hannibal
Too late.
had slipped through his fingers.
Well,
The Roman
just keep
consul
going to Spain.
Scipio felt the weight of the situation. Quite unbelievably, Hannibal was going to cross the Alps.
Or would it be
into
better to
Italy,
just return
and
to
the
Rome?
Romans had no idea where he would emerge. For the first time, a Carthaginian force had the Roman homeland under threat. Scipio sent his men onto Iberia as planned, but he himself rushed home to raise a new army so that if Hannibal survived the crossing, Scipio would be there, waiting.
I feel like it would have been better
Look
for
at
him to
that
take his
force.
men back with
We're
him.
here, the Alps. Although it is a little later than I expected. Yeah, it's kind of chilly. We'll set up camp here.
And
wait
he's
for
doing
spring,
it in
right?
autumn?
It's
Oh,
way
good
too
God.
cold, right? Hannibal?
During the winter?
Hannibal's famous crossing of the Alps was brutal. It was already autumn, and the men suffered terribly. It was cold. Men would fall off the sides of icy cliffs. They starved. They fell off the sides of icy cliffs. Some sources say they had to eat their pack animals and would finish off dying comrades in order to take their clothes for extra warmth. And then they would fall off the sides of icy cliffs. Imagine an army of 50,000 men with all
So
of
he's
their
lost half
horses,
his men at this
supplies,
point.
and 37 elephants trying to navigate the most hostile mountain range in Europe. And it wasn't just nature that they were up against. Tribespeople lived in the mountains, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. A tribe approached Hannibal and said, "Hey man, geez, that's some nice armor. What is that, gold? Man, I'd really like that armor."
They're gonna try and kill them and steal
As
it.
well, shut up, be cool. Hey, why don't you let us guide you through this narrow gorge? We're not gonna kill you or nothing. Just walk right on through there. We're not gonna kill you. It's just right this
I mean,
way.
I trust them.
We're not gonna kill you. Hannibal's army were forced to fight their way through the gorge as massive boulders rained down on them from above. Some clever
How many
reorganization
more did they
of the
lose
line
through
helped them
this?
survive, and they were able to fend off the opportunistic tribes. But losses from the constant attacks were heavy. As the journey continued, men who went over the sides would get stuck on the ice sheets below and had to make a grisly choice between starving to death
just
or
drop.
just getting it over with. When the deeply
There
demoralized
was no
army
saving
reached
yourself
the
at that
summit
point.
and rested for
So
a
just
couple
end it.
days, Hannibal tried to lift their spirits with a rousing speech. "Look, men, down there, it's Rome. These plains stretching out in front of you are bountiful with food to eat and Romans to kill. Move, Bessie! Look, you have just climbed the walls of Rome. The hard part is over. From
No,
here,
getting down
it's
is also
all
going to be
downhill,
difficult.
and nobody else will die. Except for them. The rest of us here, no one dies. Starting
Except
now.
for them.
Okay, let's go. Oh, for goodness sake! As it turned out, the descent was as deadly as the way up. With the cold really
Why would the
starting to
descent
set
be
in,
any
the path
easier?
became even more narrow, and at one point, the men spent 3 days in the freezing cold repairing a collapsed road. When they finally
Jesus.
reached the bottom, Hannibal said, "Look, guys, we did it."
How many does he have left?
Well, I thought it went really well. When Hannibal left Spain, he had about 100,000 men. By the time he reached the Italian plains, his numbers had dwindled to about 26,000. He was...
That's a 74% loss rate. Jesus Christ. He just lost 74% of his army. And the rest, everyone that's left, is demoralized and definitely not ready to fight. A completely fresh Roman army. By all means, they should lose this. There is no possible way they could win this.
is now caught in enemy territory.
I'm guessing he's gonna like recruit the local population, the Celts, because they just got enslaved by the Romans.
To this point, we're almost certainly traumatized.
So maybe he like gets them over to his side or something.
Hannibal up to? This supposed
That's the only
military
solution I
genius
see
had
here.
just led a starving and weakened army right into enemy
Oh
territory.
yeah, supplies.
And
How are they gonna
modern
get supplies?
generals who
They're gonna
lost
have to live
half
off the
their men to
land.
Mountains would be immediately fired and possibly even depanced on live TV. Here's the thing. While Hannibal may not have planned on losing quite so many men, he had almost certainly expected considerable losses, and he always had a plan for how to replace them. Need men? Northern Italy was full of men. Big, burly,
So he is gonna
Celtic
recruit the
men.
locals.
All the men Hannibal would ever need to beat off Rome. These Celts were filled
To do
with
what?
resentment, having only recently been conquered by
Phrasing.
Rome.
Phrasing.
Hannibal hoped to be seen as a liberator, convince the Celts to cut ties with Rome, and instead join him in crushing Rome. That way, he could gain a source of reinforcements and supplies right in Rome's backyard. But sir, in order to win the loyalty of the Celts, we would need to make a seriously favorable impression on them. How do we get them to like us?
Like win a battle against Rome.
Kill them. One of Hannibal's first actions in Italy was to obliterate a nearby tribe who wouldn't join him. This sent a clear message to all the other tribes.
Join us or die.
It was his wrath they should fear, not Rome's. The realization that a Carthaginian army had just invaded them must have been shocking for the Romans. But when they looked at this ragtag group broken by the Alps, they
Should be
couldn't have
pretty
felt
easy to
very
defeat.
Intimidated. However, Hannibal was now in Italy, and he was about to embark on one of the most astonishing military campaigns in all of human history. The Romans may not have known it yet, but there was now a monster loose in their territory, and he was vying for Roman blood.
That's the end of part 1. Time for part 2.
Hannibal's army had survived its famous crossing of the Alps, and he was now in Italy. With Hannibal's arrival, the Roman consul Scipio hit the ground running. In typical Roman
Scipio
fashion,
should be
he
ready.
marched his army straight at the enemy, and Hannibal began preparing for his first
He
combat
should have been.
with
He had
Rome
plenty
on
of time to
Italian
prepare.
soil. Before the battle, Hannibal wanted to inspire his men, so he staged a gladiatorial death match between captured Celt prisoners, with the winner getting prizes and freedom. He then explained that the whole thing was a metaphor. A metaphor? For what? You! These warriors are you! You're trapped in Italy with no escape. Your only choice now is
Oh yeah,
to
it's fight or die.
and win. What about the dead guy? That's you if you don't win. And the prizes? That's what you stand to gain by winning. And the fact that I've soiled
The best
myself
thing
in
is
all
that
this
most of these
excitement,
men will die anyway.
No, that's not part of the metaphor. Okay. Hannibal also smashed in the head of a goat. Again, for inspiration.
I am almost 100% sure that every single one of the men who crossed the Alps never made it out of Rome. I can with confidence say that that all of them were killed and just replaced with the local population, because that's how this stuff works.
Scipio, on the other hand, now arriving in the area, opted for the more classic route of a rousing pre-battle speech. Look at them men. Weak, starved by the Alps,
while we are the strongest military in the world. This will be easy, like 10,000 horse-sized ducks fighting a baby-sized baby. It'll be like Mike Tyson in his prime, kicking a baby. A tug of war between 10 sumo wrestlers and a... Help me out here, Ralph. A baby, sir? Yes, that's it. A baby. The point is, there is absolutely no possible way we could lose a battle
too confident.
this easy.
This is just pure overconfidence. Their hubris will be their downfall.
Ready? On my mark.
They're somehow about to lose to a starved and demoralized army.
The Battle of Ticinus was over almost as soon as it had begun.
So he has cavalry on
as
the
Romans
sides, they're
found
just going to
themselves
surround him, and there we go.
completely
Battle
outmatched
over.
by Hannibal's famed, lightning-fast Numidian cavalry.
And that's it, battle over.
In Hannibal's devastating double envelopment tactics. In the chaos, Scipio was wounded. Thankfully, according to some ancient writers, his handsome 17-year-old son, Scipio the Younger, saw his father fall. Scipio the Younger supposedly saved his father, and in the process, earned himself a lot of daddy's kisses. The Romans ended up fleeing the area, destroying the bridge behind them as they went. For a nation so overtly confident in victory, believing Hannibal to be an easy kill, the Romans found themselves running
Why do
away
some of those
with
Romans
their
have
tail
wolf heads?
between their legs. It was humiliating. And you know who thought so as well? The Celts. They began flocking to Hannibal's side, just as he
Or
hoped.
the Romans
Even
with the
Celtic
wolf
troops
heads,
fighting
Celts.
for Rome in the Roman camp began to reconsider. Man, I'm thinking we should try to join Hannibal. I
They're
hear
gonna
you.
kill them
Maybe
in
we
their
should bring him a
sleep.
gift. What do you think he'd like?
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Hey, Hannibal, we want to join your side and we brought you a present. A gift? For me? I hope it's Roman heads. Oh, please. Oh, please. be
It's Roman heads.
How did you know? Running away from Hannibal was humiliating enough, but having dozens of Romans beheaded in the night, now that's embarrassing. Ticinus had been a relatively small battle, but the psychological impact it had early on was huge. And it was only just a taste of what Hannibal was capable of. Despite the shocking initial loss, however, Rome still didn't seem to fully understand the danger posed by the monster now loose in their territory. The Senate was full of excuses. It's those traitorous Celts. That's why we lost. Yeah, and it was a cavalry battle. Wait until Hannibal faces our almighty legions. And our consul was bold. Once he faces our other fully follicled consul, then he'll really pee his pants. That other consul, Longus, had been in the south all this time, preparing to invade
He was
Africa.
just waiting to
He had seen
invade
some
Carthage.
success, even capturing Malta. But then he
Well,
heard
that's
the
something.
news. Hannibal's in Italy, and I'm being ordered home. But I was gonna be the big boy. I was gonna invade Carthage. and
Well,
win
if
the
you
war.
defeated
Well,
Hannibal,
can
you
be
would
a
have been the big
at
boy.
home. No! Does somebody need a nap, sir? No! And so Longus brought his army on the long journey north. When he arrived in the area to decisively neutralize Hannibal, the two consuls joined their forces together, creating a double consular army. But the two consuls weren't exactly on the same page. Having a nice rest there, old man?
Well, that's definitely not good.
Longus. Pathetic. You
If
don't
they can't
understand.
work together,
He's
that's
more
only gonna
dangerous
help
than we
Hannibal,
thought.
because
Maybe for you.
there's gonna be
Well,
infighting between
listen,
these two.
We can't just march straight at him like we normally do. We need to train our men through the winter, and we'll try again in spring. Sorry, I don't take advice from a bowling ball. Hey, I'll kick your ass, Longus. Any day now. I'm coming. Just you wait. Oh, Scipio, you feeble old man. Scipio was apparently quite cautious after his recent encounter with Hannibal, while Longus...
Good,
typically
that's
rude,
exactly how he
couldn't
should
wait
be.
to give Hannibal a swirly. So who would get their way? Well, when two consuls joined their forces, it turned out the Romans had an interesting system in place. They would each take turns being the one in charge. Consul 1 would lead one day, then Consul 2 the next. Back and forth, back
That
and
sounds
forth.
like a
As you
really
can
bad
imagine,
strategy.
When the two consuls didn't agree, things didn't go so well. In this case, due to Scipio's injury, Longus probably assumed even more command than normal. Hannibal had
definitely.
Celtic spies in the Roman camp. He
Oh.
fully understood the Roman system and Longus's hot-headed nature, and he knew he could exploit it.
Bait
For
him.
goodness sake! What's wrong, sir? I'm trying to order some
Just
pizza, but I keep getting fed all these personalized
Try to
ads about
enrage
being a hothead.
enrage him,
I'm not
get
a
him
hothead,
to
am
fight
I?
out in the open
Look at this.
without
Butt
preparing
insurance?
for it.
Who would buy butt insurance? Yeah, that sounds really stupid. Sir, it
Oh, yeah,
seems
it's
like
him.
a lot of data brokers have collected data on you.
Oh,
They could
come
sell that
on.
data to Hannibal. What?
Yep, it's
But
another
don't
ad.
worry, because you can get rid of that data. Roman heads, a double consular army, and a hothead. Hannibal needed to keep smashing the Romans in battle in order to maintain the loyalty of the Celts. And so
See, I get why the Celts are like allying with Hannibal, but at the same time, if Hannibal wins, Carthage gets here, the Celts are just going to be oppressed by the Carthaginians. Hannibal is not going to free them. He's just going to free them from their Roman oppressors and replace them with Carthaginian oppressors. The Celts really just... I mean, it doesn't matter who they ally with, they're going to be oppressed by one of the two. Who would you rather be oppressed by, the Carthaginians or the Romans? There's no good outcome because being oppressed by either side is not a good solution.
he was eager to fight another battle. The combined Roman force possibly outnumbered him, so he carefully crafted a clever trap, and he made sure to spring it while Longus was still in charge. The plan began with his army getting an early night's sleep. All right, boys, time for lights out. Sorry, but we got a big day ahead of us. Tomorrow, we're gonna massacre the Romans.
Yay!
Boys, dream of revenge. Gorzog, send out the
Sweet
cavalry.
revenge.
That night, Hannibal's Numidian cavalry made their way over to the Roman camp, arriving just before dawn. Hey, Romans! Wakey, wakey! What's going on? Hey, Longus, your butt smells like a butt. It does not! Scipio, awaken the troops! Longus, these
He's gonna
playground
fall
insults
for
are
the
clearly
trap.
meant to lure you out. Well, it's working! Send out the troops! Longus, it's clearly a trap. And
He's
I'm
gonna fall for
falling
it.
Send out the troops! Hey,
Idiot.
guys, wake up. You're heading out for battle. What?
So I'm guessing this is how
But we
Hannibal
haven't had
wins most of his
breakfast.
battles.
We're
The Romans,
skipping breakfast.
who were his
I don't
opponents,
think
were
you can
just
do that. As the
hot-headed
Romans hurried
fools.
out of camp, the Numidians began luring them back to the Carthaginian
And then
camp.
eventually, the Romans
These gentle angels
were no longer
just
hot-headed
awakening
fools, and that's how
from
Hannibal
their
lost.
slumber. Eat up, boys.
Probably.
We're having
Because
pancakes.
Hannibal loses in the end.
While the Carthaginians were enjoying their hearty breakfast,
He won many
the
battles,
starving
but he lost the war,
Romans
so
were still on their way. Hurry up! We
his
have to
victories
catch
in the
those
end just didn't
Numidians.
matter.
Hey, why have you stopped marching? Longus, there's a freezing river in front of us. Well, get your gluteus maximus in the water! All right, boys, time to lather up. This oil will insulate you from the cold. It also smells like lavender. There's the Carthaginian camp. Get ready to fight, men. Sir, I think the water from the river is beginning to ice over. I can't move. Oh, I'm sorry. You thought war would be fun? Sitting around a nice hot campfire playing Truth or Dare with your friends? Welcome to
Like the Carthaginians?
Truth. Who do you like? Sharon? Hey, look guys, the Romans are here. Having perfectly orchestrated events so that his enemy was cold, tired, and hungry, while his men were well rested and covered in oil. When the two sides engaged one another,
I think this is gonna be the end of
Romans
Longus.
were in no condition to fight. And the cherry on top, the previous
Carthaginians
night,
seem to have more-
Hannibal had sent out an elite force of men
Oh.
led by his brother to go and hide behind a bush.
Oh,
They
that's even
suddenly
better.
sprung out,
They're already
the
surrounded.
exhausted Romans, who were then cut to pieces. Once again, Hannibal's superior cavalry and double envelopment tactics had flummoxed the Romans. But the key word at Trebia was control. Hannibal used his intel on the enemy and the
Don't tell me the
environment of
Romans are just gonna
battlefield
keep falling
to
for the
carefully
same stupid
control
trick
the
all the time.
conditions of battle, creating lots of little advantages for himself that paved the way to success. And concealing troops for an ambush? All of these things are what make Hannibal the genius he's remembered as today. As for Longus, he managed to escape the battlefield with a small number of troops. Disgraced, he didn't want the Senate to find out what had happened, and he began obscuring communications back to Rome.
Oh my god, he's only making the situation worse.
Looking for you. Nowhere in particular. Longest 30,000 men are missing. Do you know where they are?
I don't know. They just
they're
vanished.
taking a bath. 30,000 men? All in a bath? Yes. Longest, what's under that rug?
30,000 dead
Aurora
bodies.
Borealis? Aurora Borealis?
At this time of day, in this part of the country.
Good luck with Hannibal. Bye. Trebia had been a disaster for the Romans. And as even more Bye. Trebia had been a disaster.
Wow. Almost all of Hannibal's elephants succumbed to cold soon after this battle. That makes sense. I would have expected most of them to keel over dead during the crossing of the Alps.
For the Romans. And as even more Celts began flocking to Hannibal, Rome largely lost its control over Cisalpine.
Yeah, I might as well just pull back
In
at this
Rome,
point.
Complacency turned to alarm. Hannibal had outwitted them on their own soil and inflicted a costly defeat. But with that, Scipio and Longus' terms as consul were over. They were replaced with two new consuls.
Oh, the one on the right doesn't look very...
The Romans may now have begun to realize
happy.
the trouble they were in and the genius Hannibal had shown in invading Italy. The Romans had expected to be the ones controlling this war. Remember, they thought they were going to invade
Nope,
Carthage.
it's the other way
Their
around.
plans lay in ruins, and they were levying 11 new legions to deal with the threat. Hannibal had completely redefined the war. But Hannibal had a little problem of his own. Things had gone well so far.
Lack
but
of
the
supplies
Celts were
and men.
notoriously fickle, and Hannibal needed to ensure he maintained their alliance and his base of support in Italy. Any Celts he captured fighting for Rome, he treated extremely well and allowed them to return to their homes. But the longer he hung around in their territory, eating all their food and leaving beard trimmings in their sinks, the more resentful they may become. They wanted to go south and plunder some Roman booty, and Hannibal also hoped to sway Rome's other Italian allies in the south to his side.
Yeah.
So from here, the path was clear. Hannibal had to move south. Just one problem. There were two main routes Hannibal could take to move south. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly where the two new Roman consuls had taken fortified positions. If Hannibal tried to move on them, he'd be fighting from a disadvantaged position and could be bottled in. There is a third option. Ooh, tell me. We could move through this vast impassable marshland flooded with
That
dirty,
doesn't
sticky,
sound like a very good
disease-infested
idea,
water
but I'm
by the time
guessing
we
he's
come
gonna
up
go
to our
for it.
necks. But there's no way we would attempt that, right? That'd be crazy, right? Hannibal? Hannibal's 4-day trek across the Arno marshlands was hell on earth. Almost as crazy as when he crossed the Alps. Imagine 3 full days, unable to sit or lie down, because there's nowhere to sit or lie down. Meaning 4 full days without sleep, slugging through heavy mud. You contract cholera, your foot falls off, and Jim Bob directly in front of you.
Most of these
starts
people
pooping
will
in your
die.
path.
He has to
In
replace
fact,
them quickly.
Everybody's pooping in your path. Some delirious, sleepless men would see clumps of mud and say, man, I could just
They're gonna
sink into that.
yeah, you're gonna
And
sink.
they would. When pack animals died, it gave nearby men a chance to rest, but only for a few moments before they were whipped back into line. Even Hannibal himself couldn't escape the torture of it. Hey Hannibal, if we see a Starbucks, can we stop? I need to take a leak.
What happened to his eye?
What? Geez, Hannibal. Looks like you picked up a nasty eye infection. Normally for this sort of thing, we just wash it out with some clean water. But
There
as
is
you can
none.
see, water everywhere, but it's full of Jim Bob's poop. No worries, Doc. I'll just take care of it myself.
No.
That'll be $3,000. When the now possibly
Yeah,
overnight Hannibal and his
that's
army
what the US would
emerged
do.
from the swamp, they were shattered.
So what, he just lost
He
an
had
eye?
just managed to slip 50,000 men right past the Romans into rich Etrurian lands, where he could replenish his supplies, and his Celt allies could go crazy.
50,000 men, I think
securing
most of them are
Roman
gonna die
loot
from
and
disease.
food. As fields and villages went up in flames, one Roman
After that
consul
ordeal they
couldn't
just
help
went
but
through.
notice the hot-headed Flaminius, feeling it was his
Another
responsibility
hot-headed
to protect
fool.
these lands, rather than waiting for his co-consul to come join him. Immediately
I can
left
see why
to
Hannibal
go
was able to
chase
get so
Hannibal.
many victories
Now,
so easily.
This Flaminius was an interesting character. He was what the Romans called a new man. He came from the lower plebeian classes of Roman society, and as a result, he reportedly had kind of a screw-you attitude to the establishment and a big old arrogant chip on his shoulder. Picture Sid Vicious wearing a toga. That's Flaminius. And Hannibal,
I don't even know who that
thanks
is.
to his spies, knew everything. Just as with Longus, Hannibal knew Flaminius was just the kind of man he could lure into a trap. Hannibal led Flaminius to the entrance of a
He
narrow
really is
pass
going to get his
along the north shore
every
of
single
Lake Trasimene.
victory in the exact
Flaminius
same way.
watched as Hannibal's army entered the pass. I've done it. I've spotted the enemy. Sir? That big follow us sign seems kind of like they're trying to lure you in. Yes, Gareth, and I'm taking the bait. Sir, this really seems like a trap. Yes, Gareth, and I'm falling for it. Daylight was fading, so for now, the Romans set up camp. The two armies encamped across the lake from one another, and night fell over the two camps. In the morning, Flaminius would catch up to Hannibal, and he
So did
would be
Flaminius
the
not send
hero
out any
of
scouting
Rome.
parties into the
For now,
forest
the Romans
to check
got
if there's
nice
not
and
like an
comfy
ambush?
in their
Which is
beds.
what
Good
Hannibal did the
Flaminius.
last time?
Good night, Rome.
I mean, I don't know. If I was this guy, I would be like, let's see. Last time Hannibal, he ambushed us. There's a giant forest. Let's check if there's not another ambush waiting. I don't know, seems like common sense to me.
Good evening, Hannibal. During the night, Hannibal ordered total stealth. As tens of thousands of troops scaled the wooded hills above the pass, completely undetected by Rome's scouts.
No. I refuse to believe that.
Let's go, girls. Flaminius took off across the lake shore to try to catch Hannibal. As he did, even the weather
How could tens of thousands of men possibly avoid every single scout? There is no way that's possible. It's just not.
seemed to be on
I'm sure the
Hannibal's
scouts
side.
were killed or
A
something.
thick fog rose from the surface of the lake, obscuring visibility. Look at this! This is perfect! The mist will obscure our approach. Hannibal will never see me coming. Sir? Why does it sound like 50,000 Carthaginians are charging down the hill towards us?
Yeah, I'm sure someone managed to hide 50,000 of them.
Are charging right into my trap! The Romans found themselves completely hemmed in on all sides. With zero visibility in the fog, the fighting was terrifying and chaotic. Troops were pushed into the lake in their heavy armor, where they were either cut down.
I still
or
don't believe
drowned.
that not a
And
single scout
Flaminius,
saw
who likely stood out
50,000
like a sore
freaking
thumb in his
Carthaginians.
consular attire, caught the attention of one Celt warrior, with his head possibly swirling with thoughts of how the Romans had decimated his homeland. According to the ancient writers, this Celt took his chance. In the 3-hour-long massacre, 15,000 Romans were killed, and an equal number captured. An entire army completely wiped out, along with their consul. During the battle, the Roman vanguard had managed to break through at the front.
Flaminius
and
was an
climb the
absolute
hill
fool.
above the fog. When the mist cleared, what they saw was a blood-red lake and a sea of Roman bodies. Worse yet, when the other
Imagine
consuls sent
a
cavalry
sight
to try
like
to
that.
aid Flaminius's doomed legions, they too were caught and defeated. A double disaster. Rome went into a frenzy. For the second time, Hannibal had completely decimated an entire Roman army.
Maybe
Romans
pick
were
some
dying by the
consuls
tens of
who
thousands.
won't blindly
Common
rush
citizens
in
began flocking to the city
and
for
take the
safety.
bait
Women waited by the city gates
of the
in
most
tears,
obvious
hoping
trap
to hear
ever.
news of loved ones. This one man, having just led his battered
How does he get away with the same thing every single time? And the Romans still haven't caught on.
army across the Alps the previous year, now stood less than 100 miles from Rome. To this point,
You know what?
he
Whatever.
had
This
been a
was
problem.
thausands of years ago.
Now,
People were not very
Hannibal
intelligent back then.
was
It's
a
fine.
crisis.
It makes sense. It makes sense that they
And
didn't
in a
catch on yet.
crisis, Rome took desperate measures. They actually had a system in place when dealing with an emergency of this magnitude. they would forgo their two-console power-sharing system and instead temporarily
Just
give
one.
one man near total power and authority to be as decisive as he needed and hopefully salvage the situation. This all-powerful position in Rome's government had
Yeah, but
a
if you
name.
choose another idiot,
Dictator. It's actually where we get
if
the
you
word.
choose
But unlike
another
modern
idiot
dictator-
for this position, another hot-headed fool, the situation's only gonna get even worse than before. So this is both good and bad. Once again, it just depends on who they
Didn't score
pick.
perfect rounds of golf or ride bears through the Siberian tundra. They held their power for just 6 months before they were required to give it up. And in Rome's hour of need, the man chosen to be dictator
Unlike today's
in
dictators,
217 BC,
dictators
one
who
of the
rule for
most highly
tens of
esteemed
years,
members of the
fucking
Roman
decades.
Senate, Fabius Maximus. So how would Fabius, as dictator,
Fabius, is
confront
this guy-
Hannibal?
Is this the one who
Fabius
the
understood
Fabian
that
strategy
marching
came
all Rome's
from?
young men straight into a one-man meat grinder was bleeding Rome dry. Hannibal was clearly too dangerous to face head-on in battle. However, he was also stuck in their territory with dwindling manpower and forced to live off the land. It wasn't a sustainable position to be in long-term, and he could only remain there for so long. So, if Rome avoided battle with Hannibal to prevent any more crippling losses, and instead simply maneuvered around him, blocking supplies and taking out smaller contingents where possible, Hannibal would gradually become weaker.
Wow,
while they
someone
would
who's actually
gradually
thinking.
become stronger. And so Fabius presented his new idea to the Roman Senate.
Let me guess, they hated
Okay,
it?
guys, I have an idea. See if you can follow me here, okay? Instead of fighting Hannibal, when he approaches, we run away.
Of course they hate it. Oh my god.
Fabius's strategy couldn't have been any less Roman. Romans were meant to march headfirst into battle, not run away from it. It seemed cowardly, and Fabius was extremely unpopular. At this point, Hannibal was continuing south. He had to stay on the
It's
move
like
to
the
keep
Romans
his army
want
fed,
to
and he
lose.
was still aiming to undermine Rome's alliances in the south. As he went, in a calculated display of aggression, he devastated the Roman countryside and killed many Romans.
I wonder just
In
how
sight
badly
of
the Romans punished all their southern allies after Hannibal was defeated and they were back under Roman control. They were definitely punished severely, as they should.
Fabius and his army. We're just gonna stand here? Yes. Are you a coward? No. But
No, he's
Fabius,
smart.
That's my farm. Well, MacDonald, thank you for your sacrifice. You're a hero now. Think of the stories you'll tell. Old MacDonald had a farm.
Yeah, he had a farm.
Shut up. But you know who else hated Fabius's strategy? Hannibal. He understood the danger he was in. Turning Rome's allies against her required Hannibal to keep smashing the Romans in battle. He couldn't
Which
do
he
that
can't do if they
Fabius
don't
wouldn't
fight.
him. Multiple times, Hannibal tried to goad Fabius into a fight, but Fabius wouldn't bite. Failing that, he tried to turn Rome
This
against
strategy could bite Fabius in
According
the
to the
ass.
writer Livy,
And
he
it
burned
probably
down
did.
all the farms he could, but any farm he learned was owned by Fabius himself. He left well alone. Hey, Fabius. Why is
Psychology.
he burning down your farm? You got some sort of a secret deal with
Psychological warfare,
Of
man.
course not. Hey, Hannibal! What? Burn my farm too, please!
No.
Burn my farm too, please! No! Remember our secret deal! Well, you gotta admit, he's a genius. Hannibal's problem, however, was that he had to stay
he's-
on the move to keep supplying
just
his army from the
using
local lands.
the fact that people
At
are
one
stupid
point, he
in
entered
his favor.
Campania, one of the richest regions of Italy. Great for resupplying, and great for showing up Fabius in front of Rome's South Italian allies. But he was caught in a valley, and Fabius quickly moved to block his escapes. Haha! We've got him! After he's used up all the valley's supplies,
How is he gonna get
he'll
out of this?
starve. Sir? What are all those lights leaving the valley?
That's
Is he
just a
trying to escape?
diversion.
Lights in plain view. Well, that's a trap if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
Suspecting a trap, Fabius refused to budge. But other Romans in the valley rushed to
Oh,
confront
good.
Hannibal, only to
Never
find
mind.
the Carthaginian army was actually just a herd of oxen with torches tied to their heads. They then found themselves caught in
This
an
is Looney Tunes
With
BS.
the Romans distracted, Hannibal's army was able to slip away into the night unopposed. Classic Hannibal. For all his inaction, the dissatisfied Romans
How do they
mockingly
fall
dubbed
for
him
such obvious
Fabius,
tricks?
the delayer. But the thing is, Fabius's strategy was probably the best thing he could have done. He was right that constant encounters with Hannibal were bleeding Rome dry, and the time he took allowed Rome some breathing room to recover their forces when they desperately needed to, while putting Hannibal into an increasingly more difficult position. Modern historians view Fabius's strategy as generally a good idea. To this day, the act of not engaging an enemy, but instead gradually wearing them down, is still referred to as the Fabian strategy.
Why is that one picture
But when
censored?
Fabius's
Yeah, the
term
Fabian
finally
strategy.
came to an end, the Senate couldn't have been happier. It was time to start fighting again. However, they probably had a little chat about how they were going to go about it. See, Hannibal's tactics up until now had been very sneaky, or if you're a Roman, you might say dishonorable. I'm sick of it. Every time we try to take this guy
There's no
down,
such thing
we
as
march
honor in
straight
war.
at him. But
You
then,
do whatever you
oh
can to
no,
win.
Hannibal's hiding in a bush.
Honor is for
Hannibal's
fools
got
who
30,000
like
men
dying.
up a tree. At this point, I'm not convinced my wife
Just
isn't
like Ned Stark in Game of
Hannibal wearing a
Thrones.
disguise. Cooey. Look, this time we obviously have to switch something up. Now granted, we're Roman, so we're gonna march straight at him without thinking. That can't be helped. It's in our blood. But I have a proposition. This time, when we march straight at him, we do it with a massive army. I'm talking like 80,000
Like that's gonna help.
men. It won't matter what kind of shenanigans he pulls. He can hide in all the bushes he wants. There's no way he can possibly beat off 80,000 men. Grow up. You know
Phrasing,
what I mean?
phrasing.
So it was. With 2 new consuls, Rome put together a massive army, the biggest Rome had ever fielded, to put Hannibal away once and for all. To gather the men required, 2/3 of them ended up being completely inexperienced. But how much experience does
Well,
it take to
now
be
it doesn't-
expendable warfighter?
Now it doesn't matter how many men you have if they're not experienced. Since they have no experience, 2 of these men will count as 1, probably. Maybe even less than that.
As
They're
this
worthless.
massive army set out in the summer of 216 BC, the
They're just
Romans
throwing them
knew
in the meat
they
grinder for
needed
no reason.
To win this battle, just one victory over Hannibal would likely be enough to end his entire campaign. And this time,
And they're gonna
their
lose.
overwhelming manpower gave them confidence they could do it. Hannibal had taken position at the town of Cannae, where he had captured an important Roman supply depot. With Fabius gone, Hannibal knew a battle was likely coming.
Yep, now
and
it's an
he was
easy
eager
victory.
to fight it on his terms. But when his men looked out at the Roman camp, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. That army's huge! There's no way we can possibly beat off all these men. How are we gonna beat off all of these men? You know what I mean. I think he's
I mean, you
right,
have 2
Hannibal.
hands each.
Hannibal is then said to have replied, Gisco, my friend, don't worry. There may be a lot of them, but amongst their ranks, there's not a single man named Gisco. This joke was apparently so funny that his officers began to laugh and laugh.
I mean, yeah, it makes
and
sense.
when his men in the camp heard
Gisco is probably like an experienced guy who's seen tons of battles and been victorious many times. Meanwhile, most of the Romans here are just inexperienced men who's probably never even seen battle before. So that makes perfect sense.
the laughter, they were like, hey, they're laughing.
It's not even a
I
joke,
guess
it's
that
just a
means
true
we're gonna
statement,
win
it's a
the battle."
fact.
Hooray! As for the Romans, the consuls
And
were
now the
well
men are
prepared
motivated
between
too.
an inexperienced hothead and a wise scholar. Although the main historian from this era was good friends with Paulus's family, so take that with a
Oh.
grain of salt. On his day of command, the rash
So
and
another
hasty
hot-headed
Varro,
fool.
despite
Great.
the apparent pleas from Paulus,
It's already
sent
obvious how
the
this is
army
gonna
out for
end.
battle. And when Hannibal saw this, he did the same. And here comes the single largest battle of the Second Punic War, and one of the most renowned battles in history, the infamous Battle of Cannae. In all the pre-battle maneuvering, Hannibal was able to ensure his army was fighting from the south. This meant the seasonal dust-carrying winds were to his back and blowing directly into the faces of the Romans. Like I said, control. After 2 years in Italy, Hannibal's infantry had dwindled to about 40,000. The Romans possibly outnumbered him 2 to 1. Their army was so big that their maniples stretched far deeper than they normally would. The Romans planned to charge Hannibal's thin, weak line
The Romans
like
don't
a
seem to have
battering
enough
ram
cavalry.
and break it. They also chose a narrow battlefield in the hopes it would prevent Hannibal's far superior cavalry from being able to outmaneuver them. They wanted an honorable battle where
their
pure
right
strength,
side still
rather
looks
than
very
trickery,
weak.
would decide the outcome. If Hannibal had his say, however, trickery might end up having a lot to do with it. He ordered his line to position themselves
He
as
could
an
still
outward
surround
bulge
them.
with his weakest
If he
troops
lets the
at
Romans
very center.
move
Just
in
behind
very
them,
far,
out of
then
sight
they're
from the
basically
Romans,
surrounded.
stood the elite Libyan infantry, waiting for their moment to strike. The battle commenced as the massive Roman troops smashed into the Carthaginian center.
If
The
they
shape
push
of
in
Hannibal's
too far
line
forward,
ensured the
they're
overwhelming weight
surrounded.
of the Romans hit his weakest troops first, and they were pushed back. Hannibal's
Don't tell me
outward
that's what
bulge
actually
reversed
is gonna
inward,
happen.
with the Romans being funneled
It's what's
in
happening,
towards
wow.
the weak center.
They're getting
Hannibal
surrounded
had
because-
positioned himself at the center
Oh my God.
to encourage the troops to hold out as long as possible against the Roman onslaught. Because while the Romans were unleashing carnage on the center, Hannibal's cavalry needed time to do their job. The heavy cavalry on the left
I mean, the cavalry here has a pretty easy job. They outnumber them at least 2-1. I think it's at 2,400 for the Romans and 6,500 for the Carthaginians. So that's should be pretty easy. And there you go. Now you have them surrounded from one side.
after a barbaric fight, sent the Roman horse packing, with the consul Paulus even sustaining a severe head injury. He managed to move into the center to keep the battle going.
And there we
Then
go, that's
the
it.
heavy cavalry turned and approached Varro's cavalry from behind. At the first sight of the coming Carthaginian envelopment, Varro ordered his horsemen to flee the battlefield. The Carthaginians had won the cavalry
Honestly, the
battle.
smartest thing he
But
could have
back
done.
in the center,
Save those
according
men.
to some accounts, Hannibal's line did eventually end up caving to the massive weight of the Romans, and they began to flee.
I
The
mean, they're gonna
Romans
get
pushed
surrounded by
deeper,
the
and organization
Carthaginians
within
on the
the army
side.
likely broke down as they became
then the cavalry is
a
gonna
giant
come in
mass,
from the back.
trying to massacre the fleeing Carthaginians. They didn't realize that they were playing right into Hannibal's hands. At that moment, Hannibal's elite units, having done no fighting yet, and therefore fresh as a daisy, turned and smashed into the Roman sides. Many of these troops were wearing Roman helmets and armor they had picked up after previous battles.
come on.
And the confused Romans may not have even realized they were the enemy. As Hannibal managed to regain
probably
the composure
didn't.
of his center and encourage them back into the fight,
80,000 men
the
are about to
Carthaginian
die.
cavalry swooped in from behind.
And yep, there's the
looked
cavalry.
At what lies before you. A military general's wet dream. The total encirclement of a much larger force by a much smaller force. The Romans were trapped. Hannibal had unbelievably managed to use their own
And that's it.
superiority in numbers against them. Rather than simply encircling them, he had actually allowed them to use their own immense power and push themselves into an encircled position.
The Romans
This
encircled
was
themselves.
the genius of Cannae. And with that, the annihilation began. For hours, the Carthaginians slaughtered the helpless Romans from all sides. The terrified Romans were so tightly packed that at times they couldn't even lift their arms to defend themselves. The killing went on so long that the Carthaginians became exhausted from the non-stop massacre. And by the time the butchery came to an end, the grim toll spoke for itself. To Hannibal's
80,000.
70,000 lost, the Romans suffered 60 to 80,000 dead or captured. Yet another entire army wiped out by Hannibal. Many high-ranking Romans
I mean,
met
how
their
do you-
end at Cannae.
How do you even
Tens,
replace
for
that?
one,
You can't
but
replace those
also
type of
80
casualties.
senators and more. It's been estimated that 20% of Rome's male
Wow.
population aged 18 to 50 died at Cannae. This was it. Hannibal's vengeance. The stunned Carthaginians,
He still
as they
lost in
searched
the
for
end.
their own survivors
After
among
all
the
of this,
dead,
he still somehow
couldn't
managed
believe
to
the
lose.
sight of it. An estimated
That's
30,000
crazy.
gallons of blood now lay spilled.
I don't know
on
how
the
much a gallon
battlefield.
is.
Rome's defeat at Cannae sent shockwaves throughout Italy. Just as Hannibal had hoped, most of southern Italy now defected to his side. including the second largest city on the peninsula. Wow. Hannibal, this is incredible. What could possibly come next? Next? Jim Bob. I've killed 150,000 Romans. I've turned her allies against her. That's it. That's
And you still
vengeance.
managed to
So let
lose.
me tell you what comes next.
How does he...
Rome surrenders.
How does he actually lose
Their
this?
territories are reduced. We recover our lost islands.
The First Punic War should have made him realize that Rome never surrenders. Especially not to him.
Carthage dominates the
Carthage.
Mediterranean once again.
And that
sir,
never happened.
What if they don't surrender? Jimbo,
Exactly.
did you miss what just happened? Of course they're gonna surrender.
No, they're
Throughout his
Rome.
campaign,
They just
Hannibal
don't
had shown
surrender.
himself to be very adept at reading the Roman mind. But if he now thought that Rome might surrender, it was the first time he severely underestimated them. And he was about to discover an extremely inconvenient fact about Rome. Rome never surrenders.
Exactly.
At a Roman survivors' camp near Cannae, one young officer overheard some troops discussing how they would flee Rome. Drawing his sword, he threatened to cut down any man that would abandon Rome in its hour of need. That officer was Scipio the Younger. But
Oh,
soon
it's
enough,
him again.
the Romans would come to call him Scipio Africanus, the hero of Rome.
Part 3 coming soon. It's been like 10 months since this was released. It won't take a year. It's been 10 months! Imagine he releases part 3 on January 18th, literally one day before the 1 year mark is up. It is honestly insane that Hannibal somehow managed to lose after everything that's happened. All of this, and he still somehow lost. It really just shows that no matter how many battles you win, none of that will matter if you lose the war. But yeah, these were great videos, and now it's time to wait for part 3, so I'll see you whenever that releases. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like. If you're interested and want to watch my reaction to the first Punic War by OverSimplified, and with that, I hope I'll see you in the next video.